this team, we're going to stand together and fight this disease.
I come this way before, travel through the open door. Circumstances navigate the path, and life happened oh so fast. No, it got lonely. Sometimes you see, I know we couldn't make it. Even when I'm offbeat, I still land on my feet, and nothing can shake me, cause I know my took I never. This is where I am destined to be. I'm not ready to give up. I believe in the miracle of life. Life's a play for no rehearsal. Learn quickly, they'll come for your role. Games can play, can't take it personal. Cause the devil is a liar. I'm telling you the truth. It's all in what you do. Some things you gotta do. It's fight for millions. Take a second, see the blessing in it. From much expected, much is given. When I made the living, now I'm giving back to children. Never let the power come first before your happiness. Yes, you can be the best if you go the distance. Mix a little sweat with your persistence. You know that the best things are never instant. Just shine up, let them see your brilliance. Get up, open up your eyes now. It's the moment of truth. No backing down. We're bringing it to life. Oh, for the children, it's a given. You gotta give it, be a blessing.
It's my personal statement. Run a game like I'm Mason.
Learn to develop patience, determined to be the greatest. Yeah, bobbing and weaving, they changing up like the seasons. Indigenous to the grind, so I do it for all my people. Jabbing the competition, back up against the ropes. You fighting for recognition. I'm fighting just to promote equality where we lack it. Or cancer slowing our road. I'm confident we'll make it. We focus on common goals. Yeah.
Give back, give love, giving something away. Never give up, stand tall to fight another day. 2 toes, 2 feet, I stand on the ground. I'm going back soon and fight this final round. Life's a play for no rehearsal. Learn quickly, they'll come for your role.
Take it personal, cause the devil is a lie. Hey. Telling you the truth, hey, it's all in what you do, hey, some things you gotta do, hey. Hey, welcome to the show, man. Part 1. We got a long night, man. We got Elaine Murphy ready to rock and roll. We got Bob Arum at 9. We got a big show at the barbershop. Love is the word. What's up, man? What's up, DB, TB? What's up, man? I appreciate everybody start piling on in. They go, oh, I forgot, because we normally go at 9, but we had 6 tonight. But let's go. So I appreciate everybody coming in tonight, man. We're gonna get started, man. We got a strong hour ahead of us, man. It's gonna be fun, man. And if you guys haven't seen Trial 4 on Netflix, I told you guys, it's phenomenal. Probably some of the best work. Who Killed Malcolm X and Trial 4 are 2 of my favorite docu-series on Netflix, you know. And I'm thoroughly excited to have Elaine Murphy in, man, because she went all the way back and saved a man's life, man. And she should be celebrated. How you doing, Miss Murphy? How you doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great tonight. It's truly an honor to have you on tonight. You're a real life superhero.
Well, thanks.
Do you ever get tired of hearing that?
No, it's not true. No, it took a village. I just had a part. I was a cog in the machine. And the brilliant legal work of Rosemary Scapiccio and her assistant Jaleese was phenomenal to behold. Mm-hmm. So they took it home. They really took it home.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job. And first of all, like, how did the correlation between Sean? Maybe you can go a bit further, more in depth than Trial 4 actually did, but the relationship between Sean and your son.
Well, Sean and my son Mark were friends in elementary school, and we never would have met Sean except for a busing program, a voluntary school integration program that he qualified for. And his mother, who was very big on education for her kids, she had 3 of her children signed up for this program. It was called METCO.
Yeah.
And that it's a Boston area program. And it would bus kids from the inner city of Boston out to various suburbs around, and it's the chance for what they considered a better education, to schools that had better resources, frankly, more money per student spent for books and supplies and so on. And of course, for the integration, the receiving communities were very, very happy, and they volunteered to be part of the program because of the richness that it brought into our communities.
Right.
So Sean was in elementary school. It was in the lower grades, and he and Mark, my son, became really good friends. And so Sean used to sleep at our house from time to time. And of course, they went to each other's birthday parties, and we did things together.
And they separated in middle school, like in terms of going to separate schools. How did that? Okay.
Well, our family moved to Canada. My husband is a neuroscientist, and he had a chance for a position to head a department in a medical school in Canada. So we, after a decade of living in this town where we met Sean, which was called Needham, Massachusetts, we moved to faraway Edmonton, Alberta, and was a lovely place. It was terrific, if cold. And we lived there for 6 years and then moved on to Montreal. So we lost track of Sean the way anyone would with just elementary school friends. It wasn't like they were 18 or 20. They were just, 8, 9, 10 years old when they knew each other. And so we lost track of Sean, and then Sean just came crashing back into our life when we were living in Montreal. This was in 1995, and by chance, a newspaper arrived to our house, carried in by visitors, put it on my kitchen counter. It was the Boston Globe, and there was Sean's picture on the front page, reporting on his conviction. And I completely fell apart. It took me a moment to recognize who it was. It was a decade later. But I read the name and the age and the details, and I was to say I was distressed would be, an understatement.
It's when I hear you say it and I hear your voice crackling up, it's amazing how people never forget how they made you feel. You know what I mean? And I get the sense that when Sean and Mark played together and you showed great hospitality, vice versa on either sides of the family, it took you back probably to those memories.
It absolutely did. I remember Sean as such a sweet and gentle, kind of a very shy kid, really skinny, a skinny little kid with a big stammer. He's come a very long way. And he's really developed himself greatly in that regard. But he had a very significant stutter in those days. And your heart went out to him, and he was a lovely child. And I would say the most outstanding feature was his gentleness and his sweetness. So when I read the newspaper account of his conviction that day, well, my first reaction was, this is not a cop killer. And then I started reading the details, lots of controversy in the case. And he claimed he was innocent, and his lawyers were sticking by him. And there was discussion of maybe police corruption in the investigation. And especially one witness who was a relative of one of the investigating detectives, and on and on. So I thought, and the fact that it took 3 trials. I mean, there were 2 hung juries that could not conclude he was in any kind of they were getting him on joint venture, that he was with the kid who maybe other kid did the murder, but because he was there. And the jurors could not conclude that he shared a mindset. He said he didn't. So it took quite a bit for them to get a conviction.
And when you saw the newspaper article, can you give us a step-by-step of the actual actions that you actually took?
Well, I cried off and on all weekend. We had guests coming. This was on a Friday. So we had guests from Maine come that brought the Boston Globe that day. And by the time they left on Sunday, I hadn't slept well. I tossed and turned thinking about, I could just picture Sean in a prison cell for the rest of his life. He was sentenced to life without parole. And in Massachusetts, that really means it. You don't get out if that is your sentence. There's no parole. So, and he said he was innocent.
I lost you. Your sound went out.
Is that better now?
Yeah, way better. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I was agonizing over it. And as soon as our friends left, I sat down in front of a fireplace in our living room And I started typing out a little remembrance of Sean. And in fact, I was a writer. My career was in writing, public relations, and writing business reports and so on. And I thought, I just have to get my thoughts out. And my husband read it and said, I think you should send this to the Boston Globe. Mm-hmm. So I faxed it in. In those days, we used fax machines. And they printed it. And so I got some nice reaction from friends around Boston who had read it and so on. Meanwhile, mind you, I'm living in Montreal. Mm-hmm. I had missed the murder. I had missed the whole case. It was a complete surprise to me. And so after some time, I called his lawyers. I got the lawyers' names. I think I looked it up at the State House. And they told me that they were convinced of his innocence and they would keep fighting. And they were going to submit a retrial motion. And they told me, well, when that comes along, we'll keep you informed and maybe you can do more publicity. So that's how I got involved in it, just thinking I might be able to write more articles. Mm. That was the extent of my initial dipping the toe.
And what next? You actually started visiting him in prison. You actually started flying down to Boston. Is that how it?
Well, yes, it took a couple of years. So I waited for the lawyers who said, we'll let you know when the retrial motion is about to come out. And so I waited and I went about my life. I had a busy career. I had 3 children and a house to run. And I was a full-time writer, a freelance writer. I worked quite a bit for McGill University and other institutions around Montreal. And so I waited. And while I did, it took a while. You know, this was back in 95 and we didn't have the internet. We weren't able to just Google somebody. You just couldn't. And I couldn't get the Boston Globe. There was an out-of-town newspaper spot, but they only carried the Sunday Globe. I couldn't, keep up. So I sent away, I tried to get articles and they told me it was a 6-month wait to get, an archived article from the Globe. So it took a while, but then eventually over the course of that year, I think, a year or a year and a half, finally the Globe archives came online through an arm of AOL, the old, AOL, America Online Net, whatever. And so I started researching the case. So in the meantime, what happened in Boston, this is like right after Sean's conviction, was the whole scandal broke of the police corruption of the 3 very corrupt detectives, Asira, Robinson, and Brazel, being found out for having an elaborate scheme of robbing drug dealers, falsifying warrants to get into their homes, and then saying, give us the money and the drugs. And of course, the dealers did, because who are they going to do? Call the police? Right. These men went in their uniforms. So they were making out like bandits, and so this got found out, which really propelled the retrial motion for Sean. So Sean's lawyers put in a retrial motion. And at that point, as soon as I heard about it, we went down and started visiting Sean. At first, we would drive the 6 hours from Montreal. It was myself, and then my son was in New York, Mark, and he would come up from New York. Wow. And then I started just going on my own because I had more time. Mark was a student, I think, and no, he was busy working at that point. And I started visiting him from Montreal, and I did that, over and over, and we became very close through those visits.
Yeah. Speak about the visits. And the gifts you bought and books you bought. Shout out to producer Patty. She actually told me that you actually brought the autobiography of Malcolm X there too. So I'm real interested in those type conversations and books you brought and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Well, you couldn't bring anything in. You couldn't even bring a safety pin. Once I had a safety pin on holding where a button should have been on my pants, that was it. They tossed me out. Contraband. Yeah. So you couldn't bring a single thing in. You couldn't wear anything. I think you could wear your wedding ring, and that was it. So any books had to be sent through like the vendor. So, but he would ask for books and I would send them. But the first visit that I ever made to him back in was 1998 at the time of his retrial motion, and then the visits never stopped, from then on. I didn't even know if he'd remember me, because recall that it's a decade since I knew him when he was like 8 and 9, and now he was 21. We had moved away, and I was afraid he wouldn't remember me, but actually, he said I looked the same, or more or less, and he didn't recognize Mark because Mark was now 6'1". Yeah. So that was, and I remember that I was so astonished at his calm. He was like I said I didn't know what I would find when I went in because I hadn't seen him so long. So when I came out, I was just thinking to myself, I went in, maybe I didn't know if I'd find a thug. I didn't know if he had gone to the streets or what had happened to him since I had last seen him. And I came out and said to Mark, I found a Buddha. He was just he just radiated calm, and he's never changed. So the very first visit, he told me he was not allowed to discuss his case. His lawyers strictly forbade any kind of discussion of the case within the prison or anywhere else, and that's just customary. Right. But he did look at me and he teared up and he said, "The witnesses lied." And I nodded. And then when Mark and I left, Mark said to me, I know people in prison always say they're innocent, but what if he really is? What if he really is? And I thought, I can never go back to not knowing this. I know he's in prison for the rest of his life. And I write about this, about my feelings in the book that I've got, hopefully coming out soon. And then on my website, there's a page about me just to explain who I am, doing the website that I created for him to get his case known.
And that's In for Life, right? That's the name of the book, right?
In for Life is going to be the name of the book. The website is called justiceforseanellis.com. And since Trial 4 hit, it's just phenomenal. It's taken off. I mean, we have people from 99 countries around the world are watching and learning about Sean's case. It's amazing. The reach of Netflix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? Now,
amazing.
So what happens in between like your visits and like the interactions between like his team, your family, and the type of concessions that you're actually making to help get Sean free?
Well, I started researching the case. The very first thing I did with his trial lawyers, Norman Zalkind and David Duncan, was they welcomed me and they gave me all the trial transcripts to read. So, of course, I was anxious to find out what were the words. I had only read press accounts to that. So I read the words and I started comparing what witnesses said from one trial to another in case there were discrepancies. I was looking for anything. We were looking for anything to get him another trial. Right. So that's what I did. I really heavily researched the case. And as I mentioned, I'm a writer by profession, so I was constantly taking notes and I was used to researching things in order to write. Various reports that I did and so on. So I really started compiling really notebook after notebook of research on it. And then I did see a great deal of the discovery materials. I was reading police reports and so on. And then when you go to the old courthouse in Boston, you can, anyone in the public can get access to anyone's case file, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts case files. And so I thoroughly went through that. I went back over and over. I write that it drew me like a magnet. Every time I went to Boston, I seemed to wander over to the old, courthouse and dig through a very big case file. And every time I'd look through it all, I'd find something new. Wow. And I kept trying to piece it all together. And as Rosemary Scapiccio says in the documentary, the Commonwealth had a story and it just didn't fit together. The times were discrepant. People walking in the woods and coming out the woods. Well, there was a half-hour gap in the wrong way. The ones coming out came out earlier than the ones going in. It was crazy. But they tried to gloss over all that to the jury and kind of fudge things. And including to the point when they got to the third trial, they very artfully, in my opinion, didn't call two witnesses who had a lot of details, but maybe confused the jurors the first two times when they weren't able to get a conviction. Right. So with less information, it was just a little more, blurry. And they all thought, oh, we've nailed this, and the jurors convicted him. But with less evidence, not more.
Right.
So I did research year over year. And in the year 2000, so meanwhile, we were getting denial. His first retrial motion that Zalkind and Duncan put in was denied. Wow. And then they said, well, we can now appeal. So then everything takes so long. It's glacial time. These cases, as I think did come out in the documentary with all the waiting Rosemary did for the documents to come, the FOIA documents. But even just the court proceedings, you'd wait. We'd say, well, when do you think the judge will rule, Sean? Well, and he had it all down. They have 3 months to do that. Then they can go another 8 months and then 12. It was just endless, the waiting. And he lived day in and day out, just waiting and patiently. So we had denial after denial all along the way. And then he reached the end of the road in Massachusetts. And that's when he wrote to Rosemary, who had become very locally famous in Boston. Meanwhile, I could cut in any time if I'm going on too long.
No, I'm listen.
But meanwhile, it was interesting. My husband went from his positions in Canada in the neuroscience world. He got recruited to California. So just literally on the eve of Sean's Supreme Judicial Court hearing in Massachusetts that was weighing the appeal they made of the denial. On that eve, I had to go visit Sean and say, Sean, I'm moving to California. We moved to San Diego. My husband became president of the Salk Institute. I think you just live up the road a bit in LA, maybe. Yeah. Is that where you are? Yeah. So we were in San Diego for almost a decade. So, but I said, I'm not going to forget you, Sean. I'm going to keep visiting. And I did. We, at that point, before I was driving to visit him from Montreal each time. Wow. And because I have lots of family and friends around Boston, I never, worried for a place to stay. I was couch surfing. But when we moved to California, my husband was really raising funds for medical research. So we had quite a bit of travel. And whenever we'd go to New York and then quite frequently on to Europe, I'd always either route the flight through Boston or somehow find my way to Boston, rent a car and go out and see Sean again. So I would say I visited him on an average, maybe 3 times a year regularly, maybe twice on some years, but certainly 3. And then of course we wrote. Wow. But so we maintained, and unfortunately that appeal that I told you about, that was denied too. So that's when he reached out to Rosemary. He found that he had to, and I think I mentioned this in the documentary, he had to actually dismiss his lawyers. Yeah. And he was chagrined about that because they were terrific guys. And whoops, I'm going the wrong way here. And but I had friends advising me in the law community and all, and they said, you know what, it's a strategy. It's not acrimonious. They will understand it's what you have to do to get to the next step. So we did. And Rosemary, blessedly, as busy as she was intrigued by the case as she describes, and she took it on. It took her a while to really get up, rolling. And of course, I wrote to her when she accepted and said who I was, and I was waiting in the wings to help research, help in any way I could.
Yeah, you did a lot of research. I
did.
I picked up on that. And so when you did the research, did you pick up all the paperwork? They mailed it to you to San Diego, or did you actually?
Oh, no. I had to go to Boston every time, and I would always spend a few days there. Wow. So yeah, no, I had to do it on site in Boston, either in the lawyer's office or in the old State House.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. But we moved back to New England in 2009. So there was still, Sean was still there, and of course wasn't free till 2015. So things got a little easier then. But it was long distance for a while.
Absolutely was. What's happening once you get granted the retrial motion? What's happening in that time span, and how long was it?
Well, what happened was Rosemary put in her retrial motion, and it was in March of 2013. And in 2014, going over New Year's and so on, I think it was that spring, we learned that that we had been assigned Judge Ball. I say we, I feel like I was part of the team. Judge Ball was going to hear it, which we overjoyed about because we only heard by reputation that she was very fair, open-minded, and a very good person. And so she decided to hold a preliminary hearing just to think about it and see everybody. So that was in June of 2014. And things went well. And she said, okay, let's schedule some evidentiary hearings. So that was the next step. So I think there were probably about 12 separate days, maybe 11, but they were held in August that year, 2014.
Yeah. And
then November, a space of days, and then one in December. And then the final arguments were April 2015. So we're talking, months, all of which Sean was brought in with, shackles on. He was in a suit, but I think they had his legs bound, and certainly he was in handcuffs, sitting there in the courtroom with Rosemary and Julisse, and all of us, pretty big support, mostly family at that point and friends. It didn't get huge till later, but so then we waited, and then Judge Ball's decision came in May 2015. And it was on a day that I had actually been out to visit Sean. Was driving from my home in the Boston area out to Norfolk where he was. And literally, I know that we recreated it later, but Rosemary and I passed on the road because she was going out to tell, as I was leaving, she was going out to tell Sean, we won. She got the decision. And then she called me on the phone. I had just gotten home, maybe it was an hour later, and she called me. And I couldn't even, just like Sean, I couldn't even take it in. She said, we won, we won. And I thought, what do you mean? Judge Ball approved like every argument in there she agreed with. So that was just one of the best days.
What strikes me in this whole case is the suppression of evidence. How do you suppress so much evidence? How is that possible? I know it's possible, but I'm speaking for a broader audience. How is it possible?
Well, we knew that Rosemary always said that her strategy, besides re-interviewing witnesses, is to always go for the FOIA requests at every possible place you could go, the state crime lab, the DA's office, the police department, every possible place, federal, FBI, everywhere. Because she said, I want to make sure I have every piece of paper that they have, they being the prosecutors. And she said, there's always something missing. And I mean, she would even go to the point of going physically to the courthouse and look at witnesses' files, because she said sometimes they'll write in handwriting on the folder the deal. Like, if you do this, we'll do that. She said she's caught it, or I think she must have in her lifetime caught it there, because she told me about that. And so she was that thorough. And, it takes forever to have all that come in. But we didn't learn about the extent of the withholding of evidence, the hotline tips that actually name people, including one guy like 3 times. We didn't know about that till the evidentiary hearings, and then Judge Ball ruled that all of the paperwork, all of it had to be given immediately to Rosemary. So that was a great victory. That came early on. That was in August.
Right.
And I think Rosemary got 500 pages of documents, and almost like overwhelming. And internal affairs files on a Sarah Robinson, I think maybe Mulligan too, and Brazel. So we were just, we knew there was a lot. And of course, we had gotten through FOIA the access to the grand jury testimony against those guys. So we had that to go on. And then a couple of other internal affairs. Let me think of how we got the internal affairs things. There were newspaper reports, but I think maybe Rosemary had gotten access to one of them. But then I think she got other internal affairs information. They were loath to give it up. They held on to it for, as she said, they stonewalled her and the other lawyers for 22 years.
Yeah, it seems odd that in America, 1, the judicial system is slow, and 2, the evidence is not all laid out for you. As free of a country as we say we are, like the systems that use to protect and keep us safe and keep us honest move slower than molasses.
Oh, absolutely. And as Rosemary said, really, prosecutors' jobs, the job is to seek justice.
Right.
It's not really to be perverted to get a conviction. And they were going around saying he's guilty and we know it and we're going to prove it. Well, it's innocent to prove guilty. But I think that they got, in this case particularly, they got carried away by that mindset of a win, not the truth, but let's get a win.
Right. What happened to the other 2 officers?
So Sarah and Robinson went to prison, right? Oh, so where are they now?
Yes.
Well, they're alive and well.
But they only went for like 2 years or something like that, right?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years, and then they each had to pay $100,000 to pay off some of the victims, and a lot of their victims were innocent people. Like you saw Jose de la Rosa in the documentary, totally innocent guy that they tied up, planted evidence on him and all. That he was not alone. There were others they did that to. It just made me cry. One guy, there was one case, and I'm not at liberty to say the name of this family, but the elderly, well, I guess middle-aged gentleman, they robbed him of so much stuff. He had a legitimate business in Jamaica Plain that he committed suicide. And his little 13-year-old son was the one who gave the testimony because he was gone and his mother didn't speak English. They were Spanish speaking. But the man committed suicide because they wiped him out. Really tragic stories as a result of these guys' corruption. So back to your question, they went away for 3 years to federal prison, paid their money evidently. And I know one lives in Florida, and I think the other one lives in Maine. I don't know anything more. I don't know any details, but they're alive and well. And as far as Brazel, as far as I know, he's still in the Boston area. All of them declined to be interviewed for the documentary.
I saw that.
Yeah.
What do you think happened that night?
Now, if I knew that, I'd have a radio show. No. There are, after all these years, I really don't know. I think there's several viable theories, and every time I go down one of them and I get to the end of it and think, that's it. Then I think, but what about Bunny and Mr. C? What about the pan? That was a late breaking news development. Wow. That came in much later. That I did not do the research into that. I only learned about it, just after the hearings. Missy Hager did testify at the hearings, but she only testified about being approached by 2 detectives and told that Mulligan called her that night, and she was the last person that he had called from the cell phone. And Rosemary's point in bringing her to the stand was to say to the judge, someone had that cell phone, the phone that was supposed to be missing and presumed stolen. Someone had it. And of course, she wanted to show that the 2 officers who interviewed Missy Hager were Sierra and Robinson, and that they took the phone and cleaned it up. I always wonder, why did they put the phone back? If Sierra did take it, if that is true, why did he put it back and then suddenly find it a week later? That's even more suspicious. Wouldn't you want to deep six that thing? I mean, why would you put it back? And with no fingerprints on it, not even a print. That came out at the hearings, and Rosemary said to the testifying officer, who was terrible. Anyway, she said, no prints at all, not even on the not even prints left by the user of the phone. Nope, not a one, not a print. And she said, isn't that unusual? Nope, not a bit. I think
93.
Pardon me?
They had Bluetooth in 93, 94, whatever year that.
I don't know what they had, but the size of that cell phone, it was this big. Yeah, and they tried to say they couldn't find it in the car, in the SUV.
Someone in the chat said, how about Patterson? What are your thoughts on Patterson?
Well, yeah, so it's a little bit simplified in the documentary, but he ended up pleading to manslaughter and going away and being released. What happened with him was his conviction was overturned actually a little earlier. It was overturned in the year 2000, the very year that the SJC hearing that I told you that on the eve of which I had to announce to Sean that I was leaving for California. At that very same hearing, his case was argued, and they were arguing that his attorney had committed a tactical error, a technical error at the trial, and that prevailed. So in the following December, which was 2000, and the very same time that Sean was denied, Patterson was approved. His convictions were overturned based on that technical error that his trial lawyer made. And he was sent back to prison to await a retrial. Okay. So while he was waiting for retrial,
Patterson was sent back for a retrial to prison?
Yeah, he was sent back. He went to, I think, Nashua Street Prison in Boston at 2000. And he was waiting year over year, again, the slow process, awaiting retrial. And in those years, he had a very effective appellate attorney, Jack Cunha. And that's when they did all the work on the fingerprints and found they were bogus. So they went to court after court and ended up at the Supreme Judicial Court. And he won. Patterson's attorney won. And they disallowed the prints as evidence. And that meant that literally the Commonwealth had no case. That was basically the only thing that they had on him. Then they found out the prints were bogus. They were unscientific, sloppily collected. And not only did the court outlaw those prints as evidence in Patterson's case, they said never even think about using prints collected by that method of aligning one print on top of another and whatever it was they used. They're not ever allowed in Massachusetts again. So, and that applied to about 1% of cases, of fingerprint cases. So if you're in that 1%, it matters to you.
Yeah.
So anyway, so then at that point, they offered Patterson a deal. Okay, here you go. You can sign this paper, sign this affidavit, and here's the open prison door. which is it going to be? If you sign it, the doors are open. We'll never bother you again. Time served. You're out. And as Rosemary said in the documentary, he'd say, Caesar, Jesus Christ did it in order to get out.
Right.
But his lawyer told me that he was very that he himself, the lawyer, assured Patterson that could never be used against Sean at a retrial. That it was something that was not going to be allowable, and he said it mattered, whatever that's worth.
Right. Now, when you look back at I want to ask you, how credible do you think the prostitute was?
I think she was credible. She was, a sad person, really sad. In the courtroom when she was, because I saw her in person in the courtroom, she'd sort of tiptoed in the most terrified manner. Her voice was barely above a squeak. The judge had to keep saying to her very gently, please speak up. Wow. And Rosemary was very gentle with her. She wanted to be anywhere else. And there was nothing that she gained by giving her testimony that two detectives approached her and said, Mulligan phoned you, and what's the story on that? And as she went into more detail, really, in the documentary, what she did, Rosemary did unearth that she traded sex for drugs from Mulligan, and fixing up her cases, her prostitution cases, evidently, some kind of trouble she was in. And so they had that transactional relationship. She did admit that in the courtroom. But she went into more detail in the documentary, and then came out the bombshell in the documentary about Bunny and One-Eyed Mr. C, who has since departed the earth, evidently.
Yes.
But I personally found her credible. I don't know how viewers felt. How did you feel?
I'm glad you asked me. I actually found her one of the most credible people in the case, because, in my humble opinion, she was caught off guard, and her emotions matched her words. You understand? Like it seemed like it wasn't coerced. It seemed like it was a cold knock, and when he came in and sat at her kitchen table, and she was ashamed, but she knew how important she was to Sean's case.
I think so.
That her spirit wouldn't let her not tell her truth, And
I agree.
And the fact that you have to tell the world that maybe your kids, your grandkids, I don't know her personal life, will watch this through perpetuity. It's a very humbling moment.
She was brave.
Yeah, very brave, and that's why I deem her exceptionally credible, because it was very straight when she was talking, because the way she described his character, was very snakish, used car salesman type, very vindictive, kind of like an abusive stepfather, and I was very fascinated with her. Like, I wish she would have came in sooner, although you couldn't have, because he just did the cold knocks, but I would have loved to have her be like one of the mainstays. I would actually like her to recreate it, like go back and actually recreate that evening,
Yeah, I mean, my impression was she wasn't on the scene. She had sent Bunny in her stead, right?
Mm-hmm. Say it again.
And that she wasn't on the scene herself. She was busy doing coke, so she sent Bunny in her stead, to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was just saying Bunny came back all shaky and related that. Yeah. So I'd like to find Bunny. Where's Bunny?
Yeah, right.
That's a story.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Why aren't the cops looking for Bunny? And listen to this. Remember in the documentary, Misty Hager said over and over, she told the police every time this exact story.
Right.
There's no police report of that.
Right.
I can tell you, I looked at them all.
Right.
Many is the thing that I found where there was no police report made. Many is the thing.
Do you think, just for historical purposes, for the Ellis family, should that cop be brought to justice even though he's deceased? Or is that possible?
You mean Mulligan?
Yeah, Mulligan. Yes, Mulligan.
No, you can't. And I wondered that you can't indict a dead person. There's no, once they're dead, it's done.
They
Just
say
like you can't slander a dead person either. You can say anything you want if they're dead.
Wow, it seems like that. They say you can indict a ham sandwich, so why not?
I know.
Why not? Has there been any more stories as it pertains to this that about those 3 officers, Brazil and Mulligan? I forget the third guy's name, but has there been more people to come forth?
I think they stopped looking once they got them, and they did the grand jury, and they indicted them for crimes. I think it was more or less almost a decade of crimes.
Right.
And the Boston Globe was really on it. In fact, their spotlight team of investigative reporters was really responsible for the beginning of the expose on them. The department more or less said, the police department said, oh, well, we were onto them and we were just beginning our investigation. I'm not sure if I believe it, but that's their position. But the Globe, I think, thought it was getting another Pulitzer Prize for it. They did get the Pulitzer Prize prior to that on the police. I mean, the clergy thing.
Right.
Hence the movie, The Spotlight Team. And but they do great work, those people, and thank God for them, because they really started the ball rolling. Exposing the police corruption, and then lo and behold, it's 3 key investigators in the Mulligan case just blew it wide open.
Right.
And without that, I don't know where we'd be without that.
Right.
So that started it off.
Right. Do you have a solution for overall police reform, being that you've gone through this for 1990?
I don't know. I have a feeling that there's always going to be 1 or 2% of any given field of bad apples. I have a judge friend who has this theory, and she shared it with me, that, you just need more oversight. You need better oversight. I don't think, you're going to try to weed out the potential bad apples, better training, better screening initially, and all of that. All of it's necessary. But will you ever totally blot out human nature? I mean, cops have a lot of power. You give them a weapon, you give them a badge, and you give them some real authority in the communities where they patrol, and access to easy money too, for the ones who are inclined to, to step on the dark side. And it's pretty intoxicating. But I think that I believe more oversight and better oversight. For instance, in Massachusetts now, there's a bill that's I think it's been approved and is about to be, either rejected or accepted by the governor for police reform. And there's going to be a panel of oversight that is heavily loaded with citizens, and only, I think, maybe 6 or 7 citizens. I don't know the numbers, but then just maybe 3 police department folks, but definitely weighted more in the civilian life component for oversight. And I think that can only be to the good, to let some fresh air in. And, I think it takes years, especially in a city like Boston, to change the culture. I think for sure that things are better now than they were then, for sure. And Judge Ball made a point of that in the documentary. Well, in real life she did, and it was filmed, of saying that she did not mean to malign everyone who ever investigated the Mulligan case, but she found real wrongdoing. But no, I wish I had a solution. I think it's probably going to take years, and it's just going to take generations. And I think my own solution for a lot of problems is to have many more human interactions and connections among people at every level. The way we met Sean through Metco, we would never have met him. He was a Dorchester kid, bust out to our town, We were there with open arms, but if it wasn't for that structure, that structure, we would never have crossed paths with him. Right. And we were like, as the crow flies, we might have been, 5 miles away from where he lived. How do you like that? There's 2 parallel worlds going on. Right. And we need many more human, everyday, warm interactions and chances to have them.
Right. Now, it's 20. Was there a civil suit attached to this? Because the documentary didn't get into that.
No, you mean about suing for some kind of reward for Sean?
Yeah.
No, that hasn't happened yet. And I don't know if he's really going to do it. I mean, of course, it would be wonderful to have the money, and he's missed out on all that earning power from all those years that he was in prison, that he could have been accumulating it.
Mm-hmm.
But Rosemary's pointed out to him, and we were together last night virtually in a session in the town of Needham, actually run by the Needham Diversity Initiative, and we were all on the panel. And Rosemary has kind of, he can do whatever he wants, and if he feels strongly, then he has every right to sue civilly. But he may have a target on his back around Boston. Police think he's a cop killer, a lot of them. Of course, not everybody. As a matter of fact, one of the more heartening things is he's been getting messages from around the world through my website. There's a contact page, and they get to me, and then I say, I promise to pass the messages on to Sean, which I am. And people, I've looked at the messages, for former police officers, former lawyers, retired people, and current or sons of, and people from the UK, Australia, Wales, all around the world, well wishes to Sean. And it's really heartening to see the display. And there's been no trolls. It's just been people saying, I cried every episode. And people who admire Sean so much for his inner strength. You asked me earlier about the visits. I could never get over, no matter what. And there were many, many down times, many, many lean years with no results. And he was always just so strong. And he resisted really getting sucked into, he called it the negativity of life, in the prisons where he was. He was in 3 different prisons. And he ended up emerging in the last prison, Norfolk, as a real leader. He was selected to be a peer counselor and given training. And only, the ones they think the highest of ever get this honor to be a counselor. And they would bus in kids from houses of correction, like really minor offenders, but like their first offense. And they would take these kids under their wing and say, don't make mistakes, etc. And as they had credibility with these kids, and they were heroes to these kids. And it was wonderful work that he did. And I think he got a great deal out of it.
Right. What's happening now, 2020? What's Team Sean Ellis doing now? And
well, he's really busy these days. Since this documentary broke, he's just been giving interviews and trying to keep up with correspondence and so on. But he's very busy working at community servings. That Meals on Wheels place that you saw a bit of in the documentary, it's a really well-respected charity in Boston. And they make medically approved meals for really ill people who are housebound, and then elderly as well. And so he's working full-time there. He just got promoted to management. He's in the development office now, helping to raise funds and being out in the community, representing them, which is great for him. And he was accepted at Tufts University as a diversity fellow, a fellow in their diversity in a program in their nonprofit practice area. So that's keeping him very busy. He goes there or is there virtually like every Tuesday, and he does homework and has assignments, and it's really stimulating for him. He had started going to college. He had taken one course, which he aced, and then this all came along, and so he's slowed that down a bit. But I really do think he'll finish out college part-time.
What's the teamwork like for y'all moving forward? Like, what's the goal with the message and what he's gone through, what you've gone through? How do you see this story unfolding like in 2030, 2035?
Well, I'll be pushing up daisies by then. No, we've really gone our separate ways now. I mean, the case is closed. Sean is working with Rosemary and Jalise, just them, working on getting the gun conviction overturned. I think Rosemary feels very strongly about doing that. And the good news is, as we all learned in the documentary, and I had a little advantage of real-time learning, that Rachel Rollins won. So there's fresh air in Boston now. And she's now publicly pledged, since Trial 4 came out, on local TV and public TV and so on, that she will give a fresh look at the case. She's very concerned about the corrupt cops who were involved in the investigation. She doesn't like the smell of that at all. So we have hopes that Sean will get a full exoneration. But beyond that, there's no other real action other than I hope to get my book out by maybe early summer. We shall see. It's called In for Life. I'm going to put an announcement on the website, justiceforseanellis.com. So I'll be letting people know when it's available And I've just talked about my visits with Sean over the years, my findings on the case, and then the wonderful conclusion when Rosemary and Jaleese took the ball and brought it over the finish line.
Right. Were there any discussions about relocating Sean? Why didn't he ever want to leave the Boston area?
Well, that's an interesting thought. I think that topic probably did come up, but he has family here. He's really got roots in the community here. I think he really just wanted to try it out and see how it felt. And he loves his work. I know sometimes I'm concerned about him. And I think Rosemary is too from time to time. So it's a really pregnant question. But so far, so good.
Has Rosemary got any local awards or recognition for her work, tireless work?
I don't think so. I don't know what that award would be. I think she's always considered one of the top attorneys. There's such a thing as that. And she's certainly busy and very well regarded. She's gotten great press, and rightly so. And but I don't know of any formal awards.
Yeah,
I know you.
I love their persona on how Trial 4 portrayed her. And you know what fascinated me? We got a couple minutes. You know what fascinated me is how the unlikeliest heroes. You know, like I researched you, cum laude, Harvard grad, Boston College grad, and you meet a guy who resembles me, and you basically give him his life back. Have you ever tried to replay your life and say, there's no way these two lives can intersect? You know, because me from a personal level, I don't know that would have met such a person in my childhood. I was trying to think, have I met you before? You get what I'm saying? And I said, nope. I was fortunate enough to go to college, but I mean, I grew up in the hood in Harlem, New York, and I grew up in the hood in South Central LA. And I'm like, you are literally one of the most unlikeliest heroes, you know?
Thanks. Thank you. Well, you know, it was funny. I was 50 when I started on this, and I'm 75 now. So it's been a while. You know, and I just knew this kid. He had been in my home. He had his own wonderful mother and so on. But when he was in our house and staying over and all, I felt motherly toward him. I remembered him distinctly, and I remembered my son Mark's affection for him. And there's something indelible about those early memories. He was a child to me, and a child in need who I thought, when I learned about it, and especially when I went down and met him and his mother and all, that I think maybe, and his mother asked me to help. She invited me in. That's a big one. I didn't just jump in. She asked me if I would help her with the lawyers. And I said, and right then she was actually diagnosed with cancer. And she had treatments and she survived. Now that's, 20 years ago. But at the time we weren't all so sure. So it was a really vulnerable time for the family. And I thought, I got to do this. As I said to you earlier, once I learned that he had been sentenced to life without parole and he was going to die in prison, and I knew this kid's gentle nature, and I heard him say, I'm innocent. I couldn't go back to not knowing that. I couldn't just go on with my life and never know that again and say, oh, isn't that too bad? Especially since I kind of thought maybe it was hubris. Maybe I had the skills to help, the research skills, the writing, and I had done some writing. And during the course of of the case, I started the website, which I was happy to do. I started learn that sort of from the ground up of how to do that. And then I did a lot of newspaper writing for the wonderful weekly in Dorchester, the Dorchester Reporter. And they were interested in Sean and his case right from their retrial motion in 2013 onward, and including his life after. So I've been writing for them. So at least I could contribute my communication skills to his, as well as, personal moral support and warmth and love. So I had the professional side and luckily the personal side. But I don't know, it sort of felt like people say when they go by and someone's drowning in the lake, you don't think twice, you just do what you have to do. And I really learned a lot. I really gained a lot. I mean, my life is different now from ever having known Sean. I mean, I'm a changed person because of it. I'm an enriched person because of the whole experience. Some of it was really hard. but it was totally broadening. I mean, it really enlarged my world. Not that my world was the narrowest. We did, all sorts of traveling, but yet in one way it was narrow. I never ever had a brush with the criminal justice system, and boy, did it open my eyes. Mm-hmm. And hopefully through some of my writing, it's opening other, and of course, Sean and his story as told so effectively by the Gaumont and the Gaumont independent producers who did the film. Netflix distributes it, and these independent producers did it, Gaumont and What's Up Films. Hopefully the communication part of it will go a long way and maybe be a bit of a legacy. So if we can leave that, maybe that's very satisfying.
Can you visually see the differences between the two worlds now that you've been in it since 1998, would say? Oh,
totally. Oh, I mean, there's no doubt about it. It breaks my heart. Right from the start, my husband Rich and I would say, this would never have this frame up, this whole thing would never have happened to our son. In fact, once just one little example, well into the case, years later, I was talking to Sean one day and I said, boy, I maybe I had just been reading some testimony, and I said, that scene in the homicide unit when they brought you in that first night and they were grilling you for 6 hours over and over, that must have been awful. And, you never asked for a lawyer. You signed away your rights because you thought, well, I didn't do anything. They'll believe me. Wrong. And he said, I did ask for a lawyer. And I said, what? Oh, well, they testified on the stand, the detectives, that you didn't. And he said, they lied. I did ask for a lawyer halfway through. And I said, why didn't, Norman, his trial lawyer, why didn't you contest that? He said, well, Norman said, and, David, they said, it was my word against theirs, the police. And I left that day enraged, thinking, here I am, a middle-class white lady. If I asked for a lawyer, I'd damn well get a lawyer. They wouldn't dare not give me a lawyer, I think. So that's my white privilege. And I remember thinking how outraged I was on Sean's behalf that first of all, they denied him so cavalierly. And secondly, that his lawyers, being the realists that they were, just said, don't even bother. We're never going to win on that one. That's outrageous to me. Outrageous. So yes, do I ever see the difference?
Is there a way to bridge the gap, you think?
Well, I think it goes back to what you said before, the human stories. And I must say, the years that I started visiting Boston back in '98, year over year, and I'd have lunch or, with one or another of Sean's relatives and people, and we'd be there, and I'd see Black people and white people sitting together and mingling and laughing and having lunch near us. And I remember thinking, because I grew up in the Boston area, I thought this never happened in the 60s when I was there. Never. Wow. Never. The worlds were totally distinct. But I thought to myself, in a happy way, I think things are changing. And so they have been changing slowly. But now look, Rachel Rollins is elected, our first Black DA. And she's just, I loved it when she said she's the new Black Irish. She has an Irish father and a mother from the islands. And she's the new Black Irish.
How's she doing?
I think she's doing well. She's had to take on some fights. It's really tough. As was pointed out, having to take on the Boston police and the detectives union is a very tough. You have to really pick your battles because you depend on them. You're arguing cases with them. You're hand in glove with them. Right. So, and this being a cop killing was it's a tough one for her to try to do anything. But I think she'll be a person of her word. I think she will really give it fresh eyes. I do have confidence in her. I'm very glad she won.
My final question. Have you ever done anything like this in your life as it pertains to, I know you've never touched the judicial system prior to this, you said, but is there any fact finding outside of your journalism career or something that you can look back that spawned this outside of Sean Ellis' case?
No, never anything like detective work or research, literally trying to put together a case. Never anything about that. Just lots of, maybe just the fact that I was a writer, and if my phone rings and if it would be Sean's mother, I'd pick up my pen And I, would write notes just because I interviewed people to write articles and to write reports. So I was so used to always documenting everything and keeping meticulous notes chronologically, developing that. And maybe just the ability to sit and read and read and read reams of paper.
Right.
And just a stick-to-itiveness, it must be somehow how my brain is wired, because I seem to have that. And it worked in this case. So, and I'm so happy that I was able to be that cog in the machine, as I said, that finally rolled around and got him out of prison and free for life now.
Yeah, he's free for life. And it's just a beautiful thing. And on behalf, I know Patty put this together. Appreciate Patty for putting this together. How's the producer of the show? How's she doing? How is she? Is she good? She great?
Oh, Patty to deal with? Yeah, she's lovely.
Thank you.
Very, very definitely.
And I'm just fascinated that I'm going back to what I just said, is that you and Rosemary is some of the most unlikeliest heroes. You know, how our lives intersect. You know, it's just a beautiful thing, man. And,
it is.
Yeah. I'm totally honored to have you in here on my platform. And
thank you.
Yeah, when your book come out, I'll give you the last word. But when your book comes out, feel free. You know, we're notorious for supporting our guests. Like we're notorious for it.
Well, I'm going to take you up on that, but thank you. I feel very honored to be here. I really have enjoyed answering your questions. And anytime.
And your husband deserves an award too, because
yes, he does.
Imagine the capital that you have up here, and it's literally taken away from the lives that you guys have ultimately created for your son and your family. And
he has heard the stories of this, that, and the other thing so often that he deserves a medal, and he's just been wonderful. I could never have done this work without him, and he knows that. He's just been a great support, and he's so fond of Sean. I mean, we're his godparents now. We really, we're there for him forever. As Sean said, we're joined at the hip.
Right. And thank you for coming to the barbershop. Thank you.
You're so very welcome. Thank you.
And please come back when your book comes out. Okay.
Okay, I will.
Appreciate you. And happy holidays to you as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Same to you.
Thank you. That was awesome. I'll beam you out. Good. That was awesome. Awesome. And yeah, man. So don't forget, you guys want to debrief for a second? You guys got any questions or anything like that? You guys good? And I will beam you out. I'm going to beam you out, Miss Murphy. And it'll just disconnect you. Thank you. Oh, she got it. Okay, she knows how to do it. So yeah, man. And 75, right? Wow, right? You guys know we coming back at 9. And here's my thing too. I know I'll say that at the top of the show because it's gonna be a lot of people in there at 9 o'clock. Can y'all ask one question, please? Because I want all y'all to get y'all question in for Bob Arum. Okay, I want all y'all to get in. And I was watching the interview. Sometimes I let it go on a little too long because I love y'all. But I'm like, damn, I know I missed out on like 5 to 10 people that wanted to ask Bob Arum a question. And but I'll ask the question. If you guys text me the questions now you guys want, I'll put it in my notes for the show. And it was fun, man. The case. Let's talk about the case. Yeah, it's just I just hope that everybody go watches it. You know what I mean? I just hope that everyone go watches Trial 4. Amazing. You know what I mean? It's just an amazing story how like heroes are like converging from Canada. Rosemary picked up a case from somewhere else. How relationships never die. Like relationships never die, even though you part. You know, Mark and Sean were friends in elementary school, and now his mother wrote an article which blossomed a lot of interest and formed Voltron in Boston, Massachusetts, So it's very interesting. Yeah, so but yeah, it's that's it. What's up, Reg? You want to say anything in particular? Or do you want to call in? I got 10 minutes if you want to do that. You want to call in, Reg? Yeah, she's 75. Wow. 75. Wow. 75. Jeez Louise, that's amazing. So yeah, so oh, no questions. All right, we're gonna come back at 9:00. I need to go run. I ain't ran yet. So I need to go run. I had a busy morning, you know what I mean? And I need to go run and then put the kids to bed, and then I'll be right back here at 9:00 on the DZOT. You know what I'm saying? Unique Don, how's your birthday coming? So we're gonna get the hell out of DB here. DB, you here? DB, you in here? I should have put that in sooner, because y'all 8 seconds behind. But I'm excited for the Bob Arum. I've been excited all day for this run we had. Oh man, it's just exciting, man. When we get to record history, you know what I mean? It's fun. So I guess DB, he went off. Oh, you here? Okay, here. You want to beam in? I mean, you want to call in real quick? Close the show out. All right, call in, big homie. yo, just in case you forgot the number. What's up, man?
Man, listen, I'm gonna say this.
Yeah.
She looks great for 75, and Bob Arum looks great for 117. It's a new day, man. It's a new day. Part of the reason why she looks young is because her spirit. Yeah. She got a big heart, and it's showing on the outside. Showing on the exterior. Right. So, man, I know I can say this. Sometimes we've been saying so long, we're not a monolith. I think right now, I think we can all say that we're proud of the work that she's doing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's it. And appreciate her time and for coming through. General Squirrels in the building. The Queen, Patty Dean. Patty, thanks again for bringing through, a phenomenal guest and somebody that's enlightening us. Dave, Jack, Reggie Owens, Unique Don. Love is the word. First on deck, my brother Tone Brown. Sir Senior, let's see, MXC, my twin General Squirrels, big homie Cool, Dave, Jack. And I know Jarvis is listening in. So peace to the family. We'll see y'all at 9:00. 9:00. Play the song, Fred.
Easy, big homie. Easy. Yeah, man. We're going to rock out and have a good time tonight at 9:00, man. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's going to be fun. So, this going to be it's going to be fireworks in the shop tonight, dog. Oh, my God. It's going to be fireworks, dog. Fireworks. Man, it's going to be good. So, yeah.
Peoples Fernandez, you in here early, too? You listening in?
No, we can't. What's up, sir? I still land on my feet, and nothing can save me. Reggie, we'll talk about it after Bob Arum leaves. No big deal. You know what I mean? Because I think it's important that people later be on first again. Thank you. DB, the king of LA. You the king of LA?
Damn right.
Okay. Cool with me.
You are the emperor, Frederick. You're the emperor.
Oh, that means I got it. That means my reign was gonna be short like Leprechaun. You know what I mean?
Not necessarily.
Oh man, I'm the Ming Dynasty. And Lincoln is my successor. Will be my successor.
The great agitator. Sorry to get it.
The Ming Dynasty, man. It's man, amazing. Go ahead.
And I'm just excited about it later on, too, man.
I'm excited. Oh, man, it's going to be fun. Bob was like, yeah, call me at 8:45. Oh, man, too much fun.
OG Bob.
You know what I mean? See you in 2 hours. I'm about to go run 4 miles real quick. You know what I mean? And I didn't run this morning. I had Lincoln, man. Me and Lincoln was having too much fun. You know what I mean? Smart son of a biscuit. Yeah. Hey, Rob G, we'll see you tonight, though. Hey.
Better believe it. Go. Yeah.
No, nothing. I don't want nothing. What you what?
Okay, now say go on and cut out and get your run in so we can get it cracking on time.
All right, we're pretty love y'all. See y'all back at 9 p.m. Big homie. Hey, DB trying to get out of here. Nigga trying to think you silly. You think I need this extra 45 seconds, nigga. All right, peace, big homie.
All right, peace, bro.
All right, peace, kid. All right, I'll see y'all at 7. I mean at 9. See y'all at 9. General Squirrels. General Squirrels, there's something special going on in here. Amen. All day, every day. See y'all in an hour and 50.